Good evening, Bhante. Good evening. And good evening, brothers and sisters in the Dharma. Very happy to continue with another question and answer forum this evening. Now, as usual, we are going to continue with the discussion on cultivation of the mind, bhavana. And today we're going to cover going beyond the 4 jhanas. If we recall from previous occasions, we have covered quite a number of things. We talked about eliminating the 5 hindrances and cultivating the 5 constituents of jhana. All that activity is done in the sensual realm, kama bhava. And when we are able to eliminate the 5 hindrances and cultivate the 5 constituents of jhana, we will begin to experience gradually the 4 jhanas. And experiencing the 4 jhanas will take place in the imagery realm, which is the rupa bhava. And that is where we finish our last 2 discussions. Today, for today's Q&A forum, we will then go beyond the 4 jhana and talk about entering into the arupa bhava, where we will be able to discuss the experience of Arūpa Samādhi. So Bhante will talk about that until the mind reaches a state where the mind has stopped completely, and that state is Nirodha-samāpatti. There's also another name for it. It's called Saññā Vedayita Nirodha. So Bhante, without further ado, Bhante perhaps can let us know, enlighten us on bhavana beyond the 4 jhanas. What happens after completing the 4 jhanas, and what happens to the mind in that cultivation?
Now these 2 things are what we have completed, no?
We've completed the 4 jhanas.
Yeah, so that means this and this we have completed.
Yeah, well, I showed the Panchakanda only because we wanted to talk about the extinction of the Panchakanda gradually in the...
do you want me to talk about the Panchakanda?
No, not necessarily, Bhante.
No.
We talk about...
So, we are talking about infinite space,
yes.
Infinite perception, like that.
Yes, that's right,
yeah,
Bhante.
Yeah. Okay, we have already discussed what are called the jhanas. Are you aware of those things? I hope you know what all that means. The 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th jhanas. Now, it is important to understand that we are at the moment, all are living in what is called the world of emotions. All the normal people are living in the world of emotions. Now, the basis of the world of emotions is the subjective self and the objective world outside. When we talk about the self, we are talking about a subjective experience. When we talk about the chairs, tables and the walls, we are talking about an objective experience. So you have to understand these 2 things, subjective and objective. Now it is not only these 2 things, from the time we are born, we are gradually becoming aware of a subjective self and objective world where there are other people and other things. And it doesn't stop there. We begin to build what are called relationships. The self is related to the objects that we are aware of. And the relationship comes in the form of attachment to pleasant things or repelled by unpleasant things. And that relationship is an emotional relationship in the form of desires, hatreds, fears, worries, anxieties. These are emotions. So the relationship is an emotional relationship. So as long as you are living in that world where the subjects and the object are in relationship with emotional relationships, you are living in the emotional world. That is important to understand. Now, what we call meditation, according to the Buddha, is a gradual reduction of experience. It's a gradual reduction of experience. What is called Samadhi is a gradual reduction of experience. So the first reduction is to stop these emotional relationships. The first thing that we have to do is to stop desiring things or hating things, fearing things, worrying about things. These are the emotional relationships. We have to stop that. So stopping the emotional relationship is what is called elimination of the 5 hindrances. The 5 hindrances. These are words that we hear of when you study the teachings of the Buddha. The 5 hindrances. The 5 hindrances are these emotional relationships. So, when these emotional relationships are stopped, the mind becomes calm and tranquil. The mind becomes calm and tranquil, and the body relaxes. Because when the emotions are excited, the body becomes tensed. That tension in the body relaxes and the emotional disturbance stops. So when the emotional disturbance stops, you are happy. That is what is called happiness. There is a difference between happiness and pleasure. Pleasure is stimulating the senses. Seeing beautiful things is pleasure. Hearing pleasant sounds is pleasure. Smelling pleasant perfumes is pleasure. Tasting pleasant tastes is pleasure. Touching pleasant touches is pleasure. That is stimulating the senses. Pleasure is a thing that comes and goes. And what is coming and going is unstable. And what is unstable is unpleasant. So if you go after pleasures, you will become an unhappy person. If you want to be happy, you have to stop going after pleasures and instead learn to relax the body and calm the mind. And that is how you become happy. Happiness is where the mind is not disturbed by emotional agitations. So it's a gradual calming of the mind is what we call ecstasy. Ecstasy means, ek means oust, stasy means standing, standing out. Now if you go out of this room and stand outside the door, that is called ecstasy, standing out. So in the same way, if you get out of the emotional world, that means that is the first ecstasy. Your mind is calmed and the body is relaxed. And it's a gradual reduction further when you get into the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, is a gradual reduction of that subjective experience. The subjective experience is gradually reduced. Now that I don't want to repeat again because we already discussed this last time. So we don't have to waste time. And if you want to know further, it's all written in that book. You read the book, you'll understand it. Now, today we are going to talk about a further reduction, because the subjective experience is in two forms. the subjective experience is in two forms. These two forms are called the affective and the cognitive. Affective means how you feel. The feeling in the body, that is the affective. If you feel comfort in the body, that is the feeling. If you feel uncomfortable, that is the feeling. If you feel a neutral feeling, which is neither pleasant nor unpleasant, that is also a feeling. It is that feeling that makes us feel, I am here. That is the subjective feeling. So there are objective feelings also. If you see something and if you see that it is beautiful, that is an objective feeling. If you see something as ugly, that is also objective feeling. That is something outside. So here, when we speak of the subjective experience, we have the feeling that is the affective, that is called the affective. But there is another subjective experience, and that is thinking. Thinking is also a subjective experience. Now that is what is called cognitive. The cognitive experience. So we have two kinds of subjective experiences, the affective and the cognitive. Very often we think that the affective and the cognitive is the same thing, but that is not true. So anyway, the Buddha was able to gradually reduce the subjective feelings, the affective, and at the fourth ecstasy or the fourth jhana, all the subjective experience stops. So the subjective experience is no more. Then we have the cognitive part, which is also normally cognition is what produces the objective experience. Cognition means seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, is cognition. So when we cognize something. That means we see or hear something. And that something is seen as an object outside. But when we begin to stop this cognitive, the subjective experience, we are left with seeing. And when the seeing has also stopped, what do we see? When the seeing has stopped, the only thing that we can see is what we call empty space. So empty space is also an object to be seen. And then we begin to become aware of empty space. And empty space, does it have a length or a breadth or a depth? There is no such thing. So that means the empty space has no limit. And if it has no limit, it is called infinite, infinite. So that is called the infinity of space. The infinity of space. That is all that we can see. And when we become aware of this infinity of space, we see it as an object. And when we begin to look at this infinity of space, is it really an object? We begin to see that the infinity of space is a subjective experience. So, we begin to focus on the subjective experience, which is seeing. Seeing is the subjective experience. So what we thought was an objective experience is really a subjective experience, which is seeing. And that seeing itself has no limit. And therefore it is also infinite. It is infinite perception. So when we enter that state of infinite perception, what are we aware of? We are aware of what? We are aware of nothing. That is the awareness of nothing. Akinchanyayatana is called. Akincha means the nothing, awareness of nothing. You know, when this Prince Siddhartha went to learn from two teachers called Alar Kalama and Uddaka-Putta. Both Alar Kalama and Uddaka-Putta had reached only that point. That is ultimately awareness of nothing. Akinchanyayatana. Now the Buddha wanted to, Prince Siddhartha, the Bodhisattva, wanted to go further. Now if there is nothing, you are aware of nothing, so you want to give up even the awareness of nothing. And so, it was the Uddaka-Putta. Putta means the disciple of Uddaka-Rama. So the Uddaka-Putta told the prince, my teacher had reached a higher state than this. I have not reached that state. If you like, I can tell you what he told me, and you can try to experience that state. So he said, okay. And he listened to him and then tried and gave up even that awareness of nothing. So he came to that stage called neither sensation nor no sensation. Neva saññā na saññāyatana. Saññā is the sensation. You can't say there is a sensation, you can't say there is no sensation. It's the ultimate limit. That is called the threshold of perception. You know what the threshold means. When you come out of that door and stand just at the door, that is what is called the threshold. So you have come to the threshold of perception. Now, he wanted to go beyond that. He wanted to get out. But there was no one to teach him how to do that. So he thought, well, that is the end of what I can achieve here. So he thought, I will try and join the ascetics who are trying to give pain to their bodies and discomfort. And he went and joined those 5 ascetics. And there he started fasting. He stopped eating. And he stopped eating to such an extent that his body became like a skeleton. Still, he couldn't find the ultimate solution. So he thought, now there is only one more thing to do. I will stop breathing. So he stopped breathing. And when he stopped breathing, ultimately he fainted. And everyone thought he was dead. But somehow he woke up from that state. And when he woke up, he began to think, all these days I have been trying to learn from other people. I have been trying to do what other people do. And it didn't work. And then he recalled when he was a small child, when there was a ceremony called the ploughing ceremony. All the babysitters and the people who were looking after the child became interested in that ceremony, and he was left alone. At that moment, he entered the first jhana. Why did he enter the first jhana? It was not something that he did. He had been practicing what are called the paramitas for many lives, innumerable lives. So he had already purified his mind. His mind was free of all the hindrances, the 5 hindrances. and as a result, he automatically entered the first jhana. When he remembered this, he thought, this is the right way. I will follow this method, and that was to give up, let go of everything. So again, from that point, he gradually gave up everything, and ultimately he reached that same state that he reached while he was following the teachers Alar, Kala, Mundarga. He entered that state called neither sensations nor no sensations. And he gave up that also, and he came to what is called the cessation of feeling and sensation. That is a complete stopping of that activity called mind. He began to understand that what is called the mind is not another entity separate from the body. Most people think mind and body are two entities which are separate. That is not true. What is called the mind is simply an activity of the body. And that activity can be stopped. And so he stopped that activity. So when you stop that activity, the body becomes like a dead body. There is no mind. There is no thinking. But there is a difference between the dead body and this body where the mental activity has stopped. The difference is there is what is called today in the modern world, it is called metabolism. If you know about what that is, you'll know it. It is simply the basic activity where the sugar molecule is broken up into water and carbon dioxide. That kind of activities, they are just to provide the energy for the maintenance of the body. And because that activity is there is a temperature in the body. So two things are present. In the dead body, the temperature goes away and the metabolism stops. But in this body, the temperature remains and the metabolism remains. But there is no thinking or consciousness. that state is what I call avijja. The Pali word avijja comes from the root with. With is simply sensation. With Vedana, the word Vedana is also coming from the same root. Vedana is the sensation. And Vijja means the presence of Vedana. But in this particular state, the Vedana has stopped. The sensation has stopped. And therefore it is the absence of Vedana. So I was trying to find a good English word to translate this state. And that is the word insentience. Insentience. The absence of sensitivity. It's called insentience. How the Buddha or the Prince Siddhartha didn't stop, remain in that state for a long time. After some time, he automatically woke up again. And as he woke up, what happened? He began to see how this process of perception creates the world that we are aware of, and ultimately creates also the self that we are aware of. In other words, the objective experience and the subjective experience is created by this process of perception. And with that comes all the sufferings in the world. A detailed description of that is what is called the Paticca-samuppada. It is only by fully understanding this, by becoming aware of it, that you awaken from the dream of existence. And next time we'll be going through this description of this process. So today we stop here and you can ask questions.
Okay, Bhante, thank you very much for your explanation. It is very enlightening. Now, Bhante, you mentioned the word avijja is insentience, and you basically described that to be the state where the mind has stopped completely. where traditionally that would have been called the Saññā Vedayita Nirodha, or another name for it is Nirodha-samāpatti. So before we talk about trying to get a better understanding of avijja, I just have a question regarding these two terms, Saññā Vedayita Nirodha and Nirodha-samāpatti. These are two terms. Are they both describing exactly the same thing, or is there any difference between these two conditions?
Well, what is the difference between closing the eyes and not seeing? Now, when you close your eyes, do you see anything? You don't see anything unless it is just imagination. But the Saññā Vedayita Nirodha is like closing the eyes. And what is that other word?
Nirodha-samāpatti.
Yeah, Nirodha-samāpatti. Of course, Nirodha-samāpatti is a different thing. Don't think that Nirodha-samāpatti is the same thing as Saññā Vedayita Nirodha. Today, most people think Nirodha-samāpatti and Saññā Vedayita Nirodha is the same thing. No. When you come out of that and awaken, you begin to see how the mind is working and creating this. Seeing that is Nirodha-samāpatti. So, the Nirodha-samāpatti, during Nirodha-samāpatti, you are fully aware of what is going on. Yeah.
So then, that means, from your interpretation, these two terms do not really mean exactly the same thing.
No.
So perhaps to enlighten us, Bhante, could you explain a translation of the meaning of Saññā Vedayita Nirodha? Perhaps you could translate that term.
I told you, Saññā and Vedana must be understood. Nirodha means Saññā Vedayita Nirodha. Nirodha means stopping. Nirodha is to stop. Saññā and Vedana. Saññā is what you see. Say, if you are talking about the eye, what you see is Saññā. And the feeling of what you see is Vedana. That means when you open your eyes, what you see is a color. If you see the color blue, when you open your eyes, you see the color blue, that is what you see. If you like the color blue, that is Vedana. Vedana is the liking part. How you feel. So, the feeling and the sensation. What you see is the sensation. And the feeling is the Vedana. When you hear a sound, the sound that you hear is the Saññā. If you like the sound, that is the Vedana. So every time you see something or hear something or smell something, there is always a feeling whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. So the feeling and what you see or hear, that is the meaning of Vedana and Saññā. Saññā is what you see or hear, and Vedana is how you feel.
Okay.
These always go together. You can't separate them. So Vedana and Saññā always go together. And this is the stopping of Vedana and Saññā. Nirodha means stopping.
So Bhante, does that mean that at this state, the Panchakanda has completely stopped?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is no Panchakanda there.
All right. And then, perhaps Bhante could then explain the translation of the word Nirodha-samāpatti then. What exactly is Samāpatti?
I told you, Nirodha-samāpatti means Nirodha. First you have to understand the word Samāpatti.
Yeah.
The Samāpatti means attainment. Samāpatti. Now, when you take the 5 precepts, you see what is the first precept?
Not to harm living things. Not to harm living things.
No. The what is the Pali word?
Panatipata. Panatipata.
Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. What is Samadhiyami? That means you have entered that state of avoiding harming living beings. So that samadhiyami is a action, a verb, and samadhiyami means something has been done. So Nirodha-samāpatti means you have attained that state. So Nirodha means the stopping. It is really what we call awakening from the dream of existence. Nirodha means the stopping. What is stopped is bhava. Bhava nirodho nibbāna. Bhava nirodho nibbāna. What we call nibbāna or nirvana is the stopping of bhava. And bhava means existence. So you don't exist anymore. So Nirodha-samāpatti means you have entered the stopping of existence. That means you don't exist anymore. You have awakened from the dream of existence. That awakening is like you have been dreaming. It's a dream. When you wake up, that dream is no more a truth. But while you are dreaming, it is real for you. But when you wake up, the dream is not real anymore. So in the same way, normally people think, I am existing. But when you awaken from this dream, you are aware that you are not existing anymore. That awakening is the Nirodha-samāpatti. That awakening from the dream is what is called Nirodha-samāpatti.
So that means when a person has reached that state, he now has become the Buddha.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have become a Buddha.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier on that as Prince Siddhartha, he was learning from his teachers, and his teacher only attained the state of the realm of nothingness.
Yeah.
And then he by his own practice, he went on to attain the state of the realm of neither sensation nor no sensation.
Yeah.
You mentioned that at that time he was still not yet enlightened, not yet awakened as a Buddha.
Yeah.
That means as Prince Siddhartha, he was able to practice up to that state of neither sensation nor no sensation, but still has not become the Buddha yet.
Yeah. No. The thing is that he didn't enter cessation of sensation and perception.
Yeah.
He went only neva saññā na saññāyatana. Neither sensation nor no sensation.
Yeah. So
But he didn't get to cessation of sensation and perception.
So that means when he reached that state of neither sensation nor no sensation, neva saññā na saññā yatana, he was not yet enlightened. That means not yet the Buddha.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to stop that completely and awaken from that. Only when you awaken from that, you begin to see how your mind is creating the world and everything.
Yeah.
Only when you have seen that, you really awaken from the dream of existence. That awakening is the Nirodha-samāpatti.
Now, we also are aware that there are other people who have become enlightened or awakened, but they did not reach these states. Is it possible that there are other arahants who have become arahant, but did they reach this state? They were not meditating
There were
until...
no other arahants. Who are the other arahants?
No, I mean people who became arahants. When they become awakened.
Yeah.
Does that mean that they have to reach the cessation of sensation and feeling? Or they could become arahant without going through this process?
Oh, yeah. There is two ways of attaining that state of Nirodha-samāpatti. One is to reach that state of stopping sensation and perception and then coming out of it. That is one method of doing it. Now, once the Buddha has understood that, the Buddha created the shortcut.
Okay.
The shortcut is like this. Now supposing this is a country, someone comes for the first time to this country, can't find the way. So this person goes round and somehow creates a map. Now another man comes and also wants to go somewhere and find the way, and this person gives a map, and that person can now use the map and find the way. So in a similar way, the Buddha was able to give his disciples the map, how to do it. And so, the disciples can understand how the mind is working without going to that extent of stopping the sensation and perception. Mm-hmm. And that is when you enter the fourth jhana. Somehow you have to enter the fourth jhana, and once you have entered the fourth jhana, at the fourth jhana it is possible to analyze the activity of the mind and understand what are called the 5 constituents of the process of perception. The 5 parts of the process of perception. When that has been understood properly, you understand the paticca samuppada, and that is how you can become an arahant by doing that. This is how the chief disciple of the Buddha, Sariputta, he was just listening to the Buddha and he became an arahant. He didn't have to go through this whole process. By listening to the Buddha, he automatically attained the fourth jhana, and from that state, he began to understand. That is, of course, you have to have developed your mind to a certain level, only then you can do it. Everyone can't just do it. You see, this is why it is very important to practice meditation in the proper way. It is only by practicing meditation in the proper way that you can develop your mind to that level.
I have one more very important question. You mentioned avijja. So when the mind has stopped with this Saññā Vedayita Nirodha, you mentioned that is also avijja.
What?
Insentience.
Insentience.
And that is avijja.
Yeah.
Now, all the translations we ever come across always said avijja is ignorance. So how do we reconcile that understanding then? Because there's a lot of explanation about avijja as ignorance, but now you're pointing out that avijja is really insentience.
You see, if ignorance is possible only for a person who is conscious. Mm-hmm. If you are unconscious, you can't be ignorant, no?
That's right. That's what I also felt when I read the Paticca
You have to first be conscious before you can be ignorant.
Yeah. This in fact was the point that made me question the traditional explanation of Paticca Samuppada. We could not possibly start with ignorance when we don't even have Vedana and all these Sankhara. So there can be no ignorance without Sankhara.
Yeah.
That's why I felt ignorance was not a good explanation of the meaning of avijja. So that's why I realized that Bhante's translation of avijja as insentience is actually the more precise explanation of avijja.
Yeah.
But this is going to be very difficult for all of us as students, because every time we read any book that mentions avijja, it just says ignorance, and everything is explained around ignorance.
No, this is because, you see, the word avijja is explained as not knowing the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah.
So, if avijja is not knowing the Four Noble Truths, then it can be called ignorance. Ignorance of the Four Noble Truths.
So does it mean that there is another meaning of avijja? That when people use avijja to mean ignorance, they are actually not wrong?
No, the problem is the meaning of the Four Noble Truths. You cannot know the Four Noble Truths without knowing Paticca-samuppada. To know the Four Noble Truths is to know the Paticca-samuppada. And avijja is a state where you don't know the Paticca-samuppada.
Yeah.
Huh? So that knowing the Four Noble Truths is not just reading a book and this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering. You see, that is not the knowing the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah.
That's the important thing to understand.
Yeah.
Normally people think, oh, I have read the book and now I know suffering and what is the... Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just on a joking side, I mean, I hear people keep talking about mindfulness. So actually, avijja is mindlessness.
Yeah.
There is no mind. The mind has stopped. So it's
Yeah.
mindlessness. That's
Yeah.
why I make a joke. I say the ultimate in meditation is to reach a state of mindlessness.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of controversy from that. But I think technically I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Avijja, if we reach Saññā Vedayita Nirodha, that is the state of mindlessness. There is no mind.
Yeah.
So I was not wrong in saying that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we basically covered it. Now, it's very important for us all to therefore understand and embrace Bhante's explanation that avijja is insentience, and Bhante has explained thoroughly this state of insentience, which is really the Saññā Vedayita Nirodha. And it is from this point then we can begin to understand the Paticca-samuppada, which will be the topic of our next Q&A forum. Because if we don't understand the meaning of avijja as insentience, it will be very difficult for us to understand Bhante's explanation and interpretation of the Paticca-samuppada from a very scientific perspective. Because Bhante's explanation of Paticca-samuppada is a very scientific explanation that talks about how the mind started again after a state of insentience, avijja. So I think we will stop today's forum at this point and open to the floor for questions. There's a microphone there, so please come up to the microphone and present your question to Bhante if anyone has question. Right? Yes, please go ahead and use the microphone because we are recording it.
Bhante, just curious, there's the 10 fetters. 10 fetters.
10 fetters.
Yes, the number 10th one, the last one, is called ignorance also when we read, I think.
What's that?
The 10th fetter, the number 10th one, is also called ignorance, right? It's also called ignorance, right, I think. But what is the Pali word? Is it still avijja?
Yeah.
Oh, but the meaning is different, or
You mean the same thing, insentience.
insentience? Huh? Oh, okay. Maybe Bhante, you explain. Can you help explain that they said you need to drop all the 10 fetters. So it means you have to drop insentience, is it?
The 10 fetters,
Uh-huh.
samyojana.
Yeah, the 10 fetters, the last one is
one.
avijja.
Is the same avijja insentience?
Yeah, same.
Oh, okay.
There are no two avijjas. Yeah.
Thank you.